The champagne flutes were heavy, clinking against each other with every step I took across the manicured lawn. My black dress, a hand-me-down from some distant cousin's formal event, was a size too small, digging into my ribs. It wasn't a bridesmaid dress, obviously. It was just a dress. And the tray? That was my job. "Delilah, darling, just help out, will you?" My mother, Mary, had chirped earlier, her voice a little too loud, a little too saccharine. She was 56 then, all sharp angles and perfectly coiffed blonde hair, always looking for a social ladder to climb. "You know, you're so good at being useful." Useful? That was me. Delilah Rivera, 31 years old, older sister, and useful. Not marriage material, as Mary had once informed me when I was 25, and still single. "It's enough you're useful, Delilah," my father, Derek, 58, had added, not looking up from his accounting ledger. He never looked up. He just followed Mary's lead, a passive-aggressive shadow. Today was Celeste's day. My sister, Celeste, 29, was getting married. And she was glowing. Not just glowing, she was radiating. Her smile was blinding, her laughter tinkled like wind chimes, and every guest at Lockwood Estate, a historic venue I'd secretly admired since I was a kid, swooned on cue. The Swan Fountain in the main courtyard shimmered under the afternoon sun. I'd heard there were fireworks planned for later, a string quartet already playing some classical piece that sounded like a lullaby for the privileged. I was invisible, just another server in a sea of white tablecloths and designer suits. I moved through the crowd, offering bubbly, listening to snippets of conversation about Celeste's beauty, her charm, her new husband, Tristan Scott, 33, whom she'd met a grand total of 3 months ago. He was a real estate agent, slick and vain, and I doubted he even remembered my name from the few times we'd met. He certainly didn't remember me from the wedding. "This isn't right, Dee," Naomi whispered, bumping my arm as I passed her near the bar. She was 28, my best friend since forever, and my ride or die. Her eyes, usually full of mischief, were narrowed with concern. She was a bartender herself, so she knew the drill, but even she thought this was a new low. I just smiled, a tight, practiced curve of my lips. "It's fine now, just another Tuesday." I picked up an empty flute. "Someday this will all flip. You'll see," she sighed, shaking her head. "You always say that, but when?" "When they least expect it," I murmured, moving away before she could press me. The air inside the bridal suite was thick with the scent of lilies and expensive hairspray. Celeste stood before a full-length mirror, a vision in white. Her Vera Wang gown, hand-sewn, was a cloud of silk and lace. It had cost more than my car, my apartment deposit, and probably my entire 401k combined. Mary was fussing with the train. Derek was taking pictures with a professional-grade camera he only brought out for Celeste's milestones. Everyone was focused on her, as always. I was just there to fetch the emergency sewing kit. I handed it over, my presence barely acknowledged. Celeste didn't even glance my way. She was too busy admiring her reflection, her perfect life. That was my cue. I slipped out of the room, out of the estate, and into the late afternoon sun. My car was parked at the very edge of the sprawling property, almost hidden by a row of ancient oaks. I got in, started the engine, and didn't look back until I was pulling out of the long, winding driveway. In my rearview mirror, Lockwood Estate stood majestic and indifferent, its grand facade glowing golden in the setting sun. The Swan Fountain was a tiny white speck. "They'll remember me next time," I whispered to the empty passenger seat, my voice a quiet promise. The smell of lilies and champagne faded, replaced by the stale air of my small apartment. It had been 3 days since Celeste's wedding. 3 days since I'd driven away from Lockwood Estate with that quiet promise humming in my chest. I was still 31, still Delilah Rivera, still the overlooked older sister. But something had shifted. The humiliation, instead of festering, had calcified into a cold, hard resolve. I started with my 401k. It wasn't much, a modest sum built from years of slogging through administrative jobs in various hospitality companies. It felt like tearing off a bandage, but the sting was quickly replaced by a strange sense of liberation. Then came the night shifts. I picked up every extra hour I could, bartending at a dive bar downtown, the kind of place where the only swan fountain was a leaky beer tap. The money was slow, but it was coming in. My real work, though, happened in the quiet hours between shifts. I devoured everything I could find on hospitality business loans, commercial real estate, and event venue management. I learned about operating costs, profit margins, and the brutal reality of the industry. It was during one of these late-night dives into public records that I stumbled upon it. Lockwood Estate, the very place Celeste had deemed perfect for her $75,000 dream wedding, was bleeding money. Badly. Its owner, Elisa Benson, was in her early 60s, a woman with a formidable reputation but clearly struggling. The estate, for all its grandeur, was a financial sinkhole. One crisp Tuesday morning I drove out to Lockwood, not as a guest, not as a server, just as a woman in a sensible sweater and jeans, pretending to be a prospective client interested in a small corporate event. I walked through the gardens, past the Swan Fountain, and felt a pang of something akin to longing. This place, with its history and quiet elegance, had always captivated me. It was everything my family valued in appearance, but it held a deeper, almost soulful beauty I appreciated. I found Elisa Benson in her office, a cluttered space filled with ledgers and faded photographs. She was sharp, her eyes tired, but still shrewd. She talked about the estate with a practiced enthusiasm, but I could see the cracks in her facade. She was proud, yes, but also exhausted. "It's a magnificent property," I said genuinely. "It must be a lot to manage." She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. "It is," she admitted, her voice softer. "A lifetime's work, almost." We talked for an hour, not about my fake corporate event, but about the challenges of preserving history, the rising costs, the fickle nature of trends. I didn't reveal my full hand, but I spoke with a passion for the industry, for what a venue could be, that clearly resonated with her. I saw the relief in her eyes when I spoke about the practicalities, not just the romance. She didn't know it, but I was sizing up her desperation. "You're losing your mind," Naomi declared, swirling a drink in her hand a few weeks later. We were at my place, surrounded by blueprints and financial projections I'd printed out. "You're going to blow everything you've worked for on a pipe dream." "It's not a pipe dream now," I countered, tracing a line on a floor plan. "It's an opportunity, and it's personal." She watched me, her usual sarcasm replaced by a flicker of something else. Admiration, maybe. "I can feel it, Dee. That fire you get, but a castle. Really. If you can't have a wedding, you'll own the castle." "Exactly," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "If they won't let me be the princess, I'll be the queen of the damn kingdom." The negotiation was brutal. I created a shell LLC, Phoenix Hospitality Solutions, generic enough to raise no flags. My offer was low, insultingly low, but based on a meticulous analysis of Lockwood's true financial state. Elisa's pride fought it, but her weariness eventually won. She knew I knew. She saw the passion, yes, but she also saw the cold, hard numbers. She saw a way out. The paperwork took weeks, then months. I turned 32 during this period, but there was no time for celebration. Every spare moment was spent on calls with lawyers, banks, and the few contacts I had in the industry. It felt like I was holding my breath for an eternity. Then, one rainy Tuesday, 9 months after Celeste's wedding, the call came. The transfer was complete. The keys were ready. I drove out to Lockwood Estate. The gate, which had felt so imposing on Celeste's wedding day, now swung open for me. I parked in the main courtyard, right in front of the Swan Fountain, and walked to the grand oak doors. Elisa was waiting, a small, tired smile on her face. She handed me a heavy brass ring. "They're yours, Delilah," she said, her voice a little wistful. "Take care of her." The metal was cold in my palm. I looked at the keys, then at the sprawling, silent estate. It was mine. I walked into the grand foyer, the echo of my footsteps the only sound. The air was cool, carrying the scent of old wood and faint dust. I closed the door behind me, the click of the lock resonating through the empty space. I was here, legally, for the first time. The thrill of holding the keys to Lockwood Estate lasted exactly 3 days. Then the reality hit, hard. The grand facade I'd admired from afar masked a crumbling skeleton. The rot wasn't just metaphorical, it was structural. Dry rot in the floorboards, crumbling plaster in the ceilings, outdated wiring, and a plumbing system that looked like it belonged in a museum. And the legal back taxes. They were a beast, far more substantial than I'd anticipated, even with my meticulous research. I was 32, the owner of a decaying mansion, and spiralling. Emotionally, because the sheer scale of the task was overwhelming. Financially, because every estimate came in higher than the last. My 401k was a distant memory, swallowed whole by the down payment and initial legal fees. The night shifts barely covered my rent, let alone the mounting costs of a full-scale renovation. I spent nights staring at the ceiling of my small apartment, the grand plans replaced by a cold dread. "You look like you haven't slept in a month," Naomi said one afternoon, finding me hunched over a stack of invoices in the estate's dusty main hall. She'd come to bring me coffee and a reality check. "Seriously, Dee, this is too much for one person." "I know," I admitted, rubbing my temples. I didn't realise it was this bad." "It's a historic estate, not a fixer-upper condo," she pointed out gently. "You need help, professional help." That's when Finn Moore entered the picture. He was 35, a contractor recommended by Elisa Benson, who had apparently felt a pang of guilt after selling me the money pit. Finn owned a contracting firm, and he walked into Lockwood Estate with a clipboard and an air of quiet confidence. He surveyed the damage, his expression unreadable. "This is a big job," he stated, his voice calm, direct. "Bigger than you think." "I'm aware," I snapped, my nerves frayed. I was tired of people telling me what I already knew. He just raised an eyebrow. "Good, because it's going to cost you, and it's going to take time." We clashed initially. I was meticulous, demanding, and constantly worried about the budget. He was methodical, pragmatic, and unyielding on quality. I wanted to cut corners. He refused. "You want this place to last, right?" he'd asked once, catching me trying to argue down the price of a specific type of wood. "Or do you want to be back here in 5 years, fixing the same problem?" He saw my drive, though. He saw the fire Naomi talked about. He also saw the panic in my eyes when I looked at the estimates. One afternoon, after I'd spent an hour trying to negotiate a discount on a bulk order of drywall, he leaned against a doorframe, watching me. "Look," he said, "I get it. This is your baby, and you're stretched thin. I can offer you a payment plan for my services. A little more up front, then installments once you're generating revenue. If you're serious about this, I'm serious about helping you make it happen." It was a lifeline, a huge risk for him, but a genuine offer of support. I stared at him, surprised. "Why?" He shrugged, a a small smile playing on his lips. "You've got grit, Delilah, and this place, it deserves to be saved." And so the renovations began in earnest. It became a montage of sawdust and champagne, or rather sawdust and cheap coffee. Nights spent scrubbing grime off antique tiles, days spent on the phone with suppliers, arguing with inspectors, coordinating Finn's crew. I learned about plumbing, electrical systems, and the art of plaster repair. My hands were perpetually stained, my hair always tied back, my clothes covered in paint and dust. Naomi was there too, whenever she could spare a moment from her bartending shifts. She'd bring takeout, offer a shoulder to lean on, and occasionally she'd pull out her phone. "Just for me, Dee," she'd say, snapping a photo of me covered in paint, or a time-lapse video of a room transforming. "Document the journey. You'll want to remember this." "No," I'd always say, shaking my head. "Not yet. Just wait." I wanted the reveal to be on my terms when the time was right. Months passed. I turned 33, still living in my small apartment, but spending every waking moment at Lockwood. The estate began to breathe again. The grand hall gleamed, the ballrooms were restored to their former glory, and even the Swan Fountain, after a thorough cleaning and repair, looked more majestic than ever. Then one afternoon, as Finn and I were reviewing the final touches on the main kitchen, Naomi called, her voice buzzing with excitement. "Dee, you're not going to believe this," she said. "Celeste's wedding is blowing up on Instagram again, like semi-viral. Some wedding blog just featured it as the dreamiest summer nuptials, and they're tagging Lockwood as the venue." My stomach dropped. Celeste's wedding. It had been over a year and a half since that day. I hadn't thought about it in months, too consumed by the estate. But now it was back. And with it, a chilling realization. Celeste and Tristan had been married for almost 2 years now. The typical timeline for a big, splashy vow renewal was usually around the 2 or 5 year mark. And Celeste, being Celeste, would want something grand, something to remind everyone of her perfect life. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. The family might return. A few days later, an email landed in my general inquiries inbox for Lockwood Estate. It was from a secretary requesting a tour for a Mrs. Mary Rivera and a Mrs. Celeste Scott. My breath hitched. They were coming. The email sat in my inbox, a digital ticking bomb. Mrs. Mary Rivera and Mrs. Celeste Scott, my mother, 56, and my sister, 29. The request was for a tour of Lockwood Estate, a potential venue for a significant family event. My heart hammered against my ribs, a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. This was it. The moment I'd quietly, almost subconsciously, been working towards. I didn't reply directly. Instead, I forwarded the request to my newly hired, very efficient secretary, instructing her to book the appointment under a generic venue tour slot. I made sure my name, Delilah Rivera, was nowhere on the official correspondence. They wouldn't know who they were meeting. Not yet. Over the next few days, I pored over every detail of the estate. The renovations were complete, the place gleaming, but I wanted it perfect. Every chandelier sparkled, every floorboard shined, every flower arrangement was meticulously placed. The Swan Fountain, now fully restored and sparkling, was a beacon of pristine elegance. I had spent nearly 2 years since Celeste's wedding pouring my life into this place. I was 33 now, and Lockwood Estate was my testament. The day of the tour arrived, a bright, clear Tuesday. I was a bundle of nerves and coiled anticipation. Finn had offered to be there, sensing the tension, but I'd politely declined. This was my show. Naomi, however, insisted on being nearby. She was perched in my office, monitoring the security cameras, ready to hit record on her phone at my signal. "They're here," she whispered, her voice tight with excitement as the sleek black SUV pulled up the winding driveway. I watched them on the monitor from a hidden camera in the main foyer. Mary, dressed impeccably, stepped out first, followed by Celeste, looking as radiant as ever, though perhaps a touch more settled into her entitlement. Derek, 58, trailed behind them, already looking bored. Tristan, 33, Celeste's husband, was with them too, his arm possessively around Celeste's waist. They stepped inside, and they gasped. "Oh, Mary, look at this!" Celeste exclaimed, her voice echoing in the grand hall. "It's even more beautiful than I remember." Mary nodded, her eyes wide with approval. "They've really done wonders with the place. I barely recognize it." They walked through the ballrooms, the dining halls, the sprawling gardens. I watched their faces on the monitor, a grim satisfaction spreading through me. They marvelled at the polished floors, the intricate ceiling details, the fresh paint that covered every trace of the rot I'd battled. They oohed and erred over the restored fireplaces and the sparkling new kitchen. "The vibe's so familiar," Celeste mused, pausing near a large bay window overlooking the Swan Fountain. "Did I marry here, Mom? I mean, I know we considered a few places, but this feels like home." Mary waved a dismissive hand. "Darling, you were so busy with the dress, you barely noticed the venue. This is Lockwood Estate, of course, but it's been completely renovated. It's practically a new place." Tristan, ever the real estate agent, chimed in. "They've obviously invested a fortune. The market value on this has probably quadrupled." I bit back a smile. They were walking through my fortune, my investment. The irony was a bitter, delicious taste on my tongue. After about 20 minutes, they returned to the main foyer, their faces alight with enthusiasm. "We'd love to speak with the owner," Mary announced to my secretary, who had been instructed to play dumb. "Of course, Mrs. Rivera," my secretary replied smoothly. "She'll be with you in just a moment." I took a deep breath. This was it. I walked out from behind the reception desk where I'd been pretending to organise paperwork. I was dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, my hair styled, my makeup professionally done. I looked every inch the successful businesswoman, poised and confident, unrecognisable at first. Mary's eyes widened. Celeste frowned, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. Derek just blinked. Tristan, ever oblivious, barely registered me beyond a polite nod. "Good afternoon," I said, my voice calm, steady, and just a touch deeper than they remembered. A smile, slow and deliberate, spread across my face. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out a set of keys, jingling them softly. The heavy brass ring, the very one Elisa had given me. Mary's face, usually so composed, crumpled. Her jaw went slack. Celeste's eyes narrowed, recognition dawning, slowly, painfully. "Delilah," Mary choked out, her voice barely a whisper. I just smiled wider, the keys still jingling. "This venue doesn't do repeat brides," I said, my gaze fixed on Celeste. The silence stretched thick and suffocating, punctuated only by the faint jingle of the keys in my hand. Mary's face was a masterpiece of horror, a mask of social composure cracking into something ugly. Derek, 58, finally looked up, his eyes wide with a dawning comprehension. Tristan, 33, still seemed a beat behind, his brow furrowed in confusion. Then Celeste, 29, found her voice, and it was a shriek. "What? Delilah, what are you talking about?" "What are you doing here?" Her face, usually so composed and beautiful, contorted into a mask of pure fury. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" "No joke, Celeste," I said, my voice calm, almost serene, in contrast to her rising hysteria. "I own Lockwood Estate, and, as I said, this venue doesn't do repeat brides." "You own it! That's impossible!" Mary, 56, finally found her voice shrill and indignant. "How could you own this place? You're Delilah. You work in administration. You were serving drinks at Celeste's wedding." "Precisely," I replied, my smile not faltering. "And now I own the place where I served them. Funny how things work out, isn't it?" Celeste took a step forward, her hands clenched into fists. "You sabotaged this. You knew we were coming, didn't you? You bought this place just to ruin my vow renewal." "Ruin it?" I tilted my head. "Celeste, you haven't even booked it yet. You were just touring. And as for knowing you were coming, your mother booked the tour. I simply facilitated it. This is insane," Mary cried, turning to Derek. "Derek, say something. This is an outrage." Derek, bless his passive-aggressive heart, just cleared his throat. "Delilah, this is unexpected. Perhaps we can discuss this calmly." "There's nothing to discuss, Father," I said, my gaze sweeping over all of them. "The venue is under new management, my management. And my policy is clear." Celeste's voice rose to a full-blown scream. "You pathetic, jealous, bitter hag. You've always hated me, haven't you? You can't stand that I'm happy, that I'm successful, that I have a perfect life." That was my cue. I subtly tapped my smartwatch. In my office, Naomi, 28, who had been watching the whole thing unfold on the security feed, pressed record on her phone. She knew my signal. She knew exactly what I wanted. "I don't hate you, Celeste," I said, my voice still steady, though a tremor of satisfaction ran through me. I just decided I was tired of being invisible. The meltdown escalated. Celeste was screaming, Mary was wringing her hands and accusing me of being a spiteful child, and Derek was trying to usher them out, muttering about making a scene. Tristan, finally catching on, looked furious. "You think this is funny, Delilah?" he sneered. "You're going to regret this. Celeste and I have powerful connections. You'll be ruined." "We'll see," I said, my smile unwavering. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have another tour scheduled." They stumbled out, a chaotic mess of rage and humiliation. As soon as the door closed behind them, Naomi burst out of my office, a triumphant grin on her face. "Oh, my God, Dee, that was chef's kiss." I got it all. Every glorious second. "Upload it," I said, a strange hollowness already beginning to settle in my chest, even as the adrenaline surged, discreetly. Naomi, a master of social media, knew what to do. She uploaded a short, tightly edited clip to TikTok, adding a simple, evocative caption. "Bartender buys siblings' wedding venue, bans her from vow renewal." She used a trending sound, something dramatic and ironic. She didn't tag me or Lockwood or anyone directly. She just let it float. The clip exploded. Within hours, it had hundreds of thousands of views. By the next morning, it was viral. The internet, with its insatiable appetite for drama and justice, latched onto it. Commentaries popped up. The ultimate petty revenge. She served drinks, now she serves karma. This is what happens when you underestimate the quiet one. Celebs reposted it. Feminist accounts lauded it as a triumph against generational favoritism. My obscure LLC, Phoenix Hospitality Solutions, became a symbol of vindication. Celeste predictably issued a tearful statement on her Instagram, claiming bullying and unprovoked cruelty. Mary, ever the victim, gave an interview to a local society blog, painting me as a troubled, jealous daughter. I responded with one tweet from the newly created anonymous Lockwood Estate account. "Cheers." Naomi found me later that day, staring out at the Swan Fountain. The viral fame felt surreal, like watching a movie of my own life. "So you won," she said, her voice softer than usual. "The whole world watched you do it. Now, what happens when you live with it?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. The satisfaction was there, yes, but it was already mingling with something else, a strange, unexpected emptiness. My phone buzzed. A new DM notification. From Tristan Scott. He wanted to meet. Tristan's DM sat in my inbox like a fly in amber. "Can we talk? Just you and me. I think we need to clear the air." His profile picture was a selfie taken in front of a luxury car, his usual vain smirk in place. I was 33 and I knew a trap when I saw one. But I was also curious. I agreed to meet him at a discreet coffee shop far from Lockwood Estate 2 days later. He arrived promptly, looking impeccably dressed, but his usual swagger seemed a little forced. "Delilah," he began, extending a hand that I barely touched. "Look, I wanted to apologize for Celeste's behavior. She's emotional. You know how she is." I just watched him, sipping my latte. "Cut to the chase, Tristan." He cleared his throat, his fake sincerity evaporating. "Right, so this whole TikTok thing, it's problematic. Celeste's reputation is taking a hit. My business is taking a hit. People are asking questions." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "We're willing to offer you a settlement for damages, for defamation. Make this whole thing go away quietly." I almost laughed. "Defamation? I simply stated a fact. You were touring my venue. I declined to host a repeat bride. The video speaks for itself." His eyes narrowed. "Don't play coy. You obviously orchestrated this. Celeste is talking to her lawyer. Mary's lawyer is already drafting letters. You could be facing a significant lawsuit." "For what exactly?" I asked, my voice flat. "Owning my property, refusing service." "Last I checked, that's my right." He leaned back, a smug look on his face. "Maybe, but public opinion is a fickle thing. And we have a lot more resources than you do, Delilah. You're just a small business owner. We can make this very unpleasant for you." I just stared at him. He was trying to intimidate me, the same old tactics. "Is that all, Tristan? Because I have a business to run." He stood up, frustrated. "Think about it. We're willing to be reasonable." For now, he walked away, leaving the bitter taste of his arrogance in the air. The threats of legal action began almost immediately after. Mary's lawyer, a notoriously aggressive firm, sent a cease and desist letter, demanding I remove the video and issue a public apology. They accused me of harassment, defamation, and even breach of privacy. Lockwood Estate's booking calendar, which had been filling up nicely thanks to the viral attention, suddenly had to be temporarily suspended due to unforeseen disturbances and potential legal entanglements. My new clients were calling, confused and concerned. Then a new player entered the game. Bethany Rivera, 25, a cousin I barely knew, a social media influencer with a penchant for manufactured drama, contacted me. "Hey, Delilah, so sorry about all the family drama. It's totally insane. I'm doing an exclusive interview series on family betrayal. Would you be willing to share your side? I promise to be fair. And it would totally go viral, for justice." She was trying to capitalize on my story, to position herself as the good cousin while subtly fanning the flames. I was caught between a rock and a hard place. Fight legally, which would drain my remaining finances and energy, or expose more footage, escalating the public circus and potentially cementing my reputation as the petty revenge queen. The latter was tempting, but it felt dirty. Finn, 35, found me in my office staring blankly at the legal letters. He'd heard about the booking suspensions and the legal threats. "This is getting ugly," he said, leaning against the doorframe, his usual calm demeanour, a welcome presence. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted, running a hand through my hair. "They want me to back down. They want me to apologise." "And will you?" "No," I said, the word firm. "Not after everything. Not after what they put me through and what I put into this place." He nodded slowly. "Good. But listen to me, Delilah. This revenge, it's a powerful thing. But if you burn everything for them, you'll have nothing left. What actually matters to you? The satisfaction of seeing them squirm, or the future of this place? Your peace of mind? His words cut through the noise of my anger. He was right. I'd spent 2 years building Lockwood. It was more than just revenge. It was my dream, my identity. Just as I was trying to process his words, my phone rang. It was Elisa Benson, 60s, the previous owner of the estate. Her voice was weak, raspy. "Delilah," she coughed, I'm in the hospital. It's serious. I'm updating my will. I want to make sure Lockwood is in good hands, your hands. I want to leave you the cottage wing on the property, but this public circus, it's not good for the estate's legacy. It's not good for your legacy. Are you willing to clean this up? The phone felt heavy in my hand. Elisa, who had trusted me with her life's work, was dying, and she was asking me to choose petty revenge or the future of Lockwood and my own peace. Elisa's words echoed in my mind. Are you willing to clean this up? The cottage wing, a quiet, beautiful part of the estate I'd always loved, was a powerful incentive. But more than that, it was Elisa's trust. She saw Lockwood as more than just a business. It was a legacy. And I was her chosen inheritor. Finn's words, too, resonated. What actually matters to you? The answer was clear. Lockwood, my future, my peace. The revenge had been a necessary catalyst, but it couldn't be the entire story. I called a press event. Not for a family betrayal expose, as Bethany Rivera had suggested, but for the official rebirth of Lockwood Estate. I invited local journalists, wedding industry publications, and even a few of the online commentators who had championed my story. I wanted to control the narrative, to shift the focus from a personal vendetta to the triumph of a struggling historic property. The day of the event, the main gates of Lockwood Estate were opened wide. The swan fountain sparkled, the gardens were immaculate, and the grand hall was filled with the scent of fresh flowers. Finn was there, quietly supportive, overseeing the last-minute details. Naomi, 28, was a whirlwind of activity, making sure everything was perfect, her phone ready for anything. Just as I was about to step onto the small stage we'd set up, a commotion erupted at the main gates. A black SUV, familiar and unwelcome, screeched to a halt. Mary, 56, Derek, 58, Celeste, 29, and Tristan, 33, tumbled out, their faces contorted with fury. Bethany, 25, our influencer cousin, was with them, phone already recording. "Stop the lies!" Mary shrieked, trying to push past the security guards I'd hired. "You can't do this, Delilah. You're slandering us." My security team, briefed beforehand, held them back firmly but politely. "This is a private event, ma'am. You are not on the guest list." I walked to the microphone, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. "Good afternoon, everyone," I began, ignoring the chaos at the gate. "Welcome to the official reopening of Lockwood Estate." But Celeste wasn't having it. "Delilah, you think you're so clever, don't you? You think this makes you a hero. You're just a bitter, jealous woman who needs attention." Her voice was shrill, amplified by the dozens of phones now live-streaming the scene. I turned from the microphone, facing my family directly, my gaze unwavering. The crowd, a mix of reporters and curious onlookers, hushed, sensing the moment. "Attention," I repeated, my voice calm, clear, and projected for everyone to hear. "Is that what you think this is about, Celeste? Attention." I paused, letting the silence hang. "Let me tell you about attention. Attention is being told you're useful while your sister is marriage material. Attention is watching your mother, Mary, 56, and your father, Derek, 58, fawn over every single one of Celeste's accomplishments, while yours are dismissed as just Delilah being Delilah," Mary gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Derek shifted uncomfortably. Attention is standing in a too-tight black dress, holding a tray of champagne flutes, at your younger sister's $75,000 dream wedding, in a venue you've always loved, while your own family treats you like hired help. I gestured to the swan fountain gleaming behind them. Attention is watching your sister, Celeste, 29, glow under the lights of a place you secretly dreamed of, while you are invisible. Celeste's face was red with rage. "This is a lie. You're twisting everything." "Am I?" I asked, my voice rising slightly but still controlled. "Do you remember the swan fountain, Celeste? Do you remember telling me to help out with the drinks, Mum? Do you remember my father saying it was enough I was useful?" I turned back to the crowd, my voice ringing with a quiet power. They raised a favourite, and they forgot what happens when the shadow gets tired of shrinking. Celeste, fueled by a lifetime of unchallenged privilege, lunged forward, trying to break through security. "You manipulative witch! I'll sue you for everything you have." The security guards moved quickly, forming a barrier. Cameras flashed, phones recorded. The crowd, now fully invested, murmured in shock and then erupted in cheers. "This place," I declared, my voice ringing with finality as the gates slowly began to close, security escorting my flailing family away, "won't host repeat brides or repeat disappointments." As the gates clicked shut, sealing them out, a reporter at the front of the crowd called out, "Delilah, what's next for you?" I looked at Lockwood Estate, bathed in the afternoon sun, then back at the expectant faces. The hollowness I'd felt earlier was gone, replaced by a quiet, profound sense of peace. The grand hall of Lockwood Estate hummed with life. Not the frantic energy of a single wedding day, but the steady, vibrant pulse of a thriving business. It had been nearly 8 months since the gates closed on my family, since the world watched the viral clip of Celeste's meltdown. In that time, Lockwood had flourished. The booking calendar was full, stretching well into the next year. We'd even won a regional award for Best Historic Venue Restoration. I was 33, still Delilah Rivera, but no longer invisible. I walked through the bustling kitchen, past the catering staff preparing for an evening gala. My hands, once stained with paint and dust, now held a tablet, reviewing event schedules. I knew every corner of this place, every creak of the floorboards, every history etched into the walls. It was mine, in every sense of the word. Finn, 35, leaned against the doorframe of my office, a familiar sight. He wasn't just my contractor anymore. He was a sounding board, a partner in late-night problem-solving, and something else, something gently promising that we were both carefully navigating. We'd shared so many hours, so much of ourselves rebuilding this place. "Looks like another successful night," he commented, a small smile playing on his lips. "Another successful month," I corrected, returning his smile. "We're already booking into next spring for the larger events," he nodded, pushing off the frame. "You built something incredible here, Delilah." "We built something incredible," I corrected him, and he just gave a soft chuckle, acknowledging the shift. The Rivera family had gone quiet. The legal threats from Mary's lawyer had slowly fizzled out, drowned by the overwhelming public support for my story. Celeste and Tristan had become social pariahs in their usual circles, the vow renewal a permanent stain on their perfect image. I'd heard through the grapevine, via a distant cousin who still occasionally tried to glean information from Naomi, that Celeste had divorced Tristan just weeks after the Lockwood incident. Their marriage, built on such a flimsy foundation, hadn't survived the public scrutiny. Mary and Derek had retreated, their social climbing ambitions apparently curtailed by the viral humiliation. I hadn't seen or heard from them directly since that day. I watched them from a distance through the occasional social media post that still popped up or a hushed comment from a family acquaintance. And what I felt wasn't the triumphant roar I'd once imagined. It was peace, a quiet, settled calm. The anger had burned itself out, leaving only the embers of satisfaction and a profound sense of closure. The revenge had been a means to an end, a way to reclaim my worth. The true victory was Lockwood. One crisp autumn afternoon, Elisa Benson, in her early 60s, passed away peacefully. She'd been frail for months, but her mind had remained sharp. Her lawyer contacted me a week later. Elisa had indeed updated her will, leaving the charming cottage wing of Lockwood Estate to me. It was a separate, self-contained property on the grounds, a place where she had spent her final quiet years. It was the ultimate full-circle moment, a testament to her trust and my commitment. I walked through its cosy rooms, feeling her presence, a quiet blessing. A few weeks later, I was giving a tour to a young couple, potential clients for a summer wedding. The bride, a sweet-faced woman named Sarah, was gushing over the main ballroom. "My sister's my maid of honour," Sarah said, her eyes shining. "She's my best friend. I'd never treat her differently, you know. She's been there for me through everything." I smiled, a genuine, unforced smile. "You'd be surprised," I said, my gaze drifting towards the grand oak doors, then to the swan fountain gleaming outside. "You'd be surprised how many sisters don't say that. I used to serve drinks at this estate. Now, I serve karma by the glass.